everyone. Welcome to the first official episode of Literal Podcast. Today we'll be talking about the shame of speaking a second language. Pardon me. My name is Excel Luna, and today I have with me
Ginel Flores.
and
Gregorio Leon.
So, first question, guys. I want to know, where did you guys learn English or like a second language?
Well, in my case, English is my second language. And, well, I learned the basics at school, which is here, public schools, basic English, meaning open the door, close the window. My name is...
Verb to be.
Verb to be, very important. But I started to get really interested in Asian culture. So I started looking up, videos and stuff, but they were only subtitled in English. And one day I just realized that I could understand most of it. So that's it.
Okay, what about you, Greg?
Oh, pretty much learned by myself. Like, as Janelle said, like, the basics supposedly in my public school and, like, elementary and middle school. And in high school, I started, like, watching videos on YouTube, like, about topics I liked. And since all of the content was in English, well, I just started, like, learning without noticing.
Interesting. That's very interesting. I've known people that learned from obviously in English and English classes, right? In middle school, high school.
Yeah.
Some friends told me that they learned English by listening to TV shows, movies, video games. In my case, my primary language is actually English. So my secondary would be Spanish. And in my opinion, I really suck in Spanish. I'd prefer just speaking in English all the time. I learned Spanish by... It's a little embarrassing, but I learned Spanish by reading a dinosaur book in Spanish. My mother bought me that, and it was pretty embarrassing because I sucked at it, and she laughed her ass off. I want to know something, guys. When you guys are speaking these other languages, right?
Yeah.
Do you think people accept those kinds of languages, or do you think they get like offended? They're like, oh, no, don't speak that language at all because it just doesn't sound right. Speak to us so we can understand you because we feel offended. Like we feel like you're talking behind our backs, you know?
Yeah, people feel attacked when you're speaking a language they don't. Like, I think that's why most of us language students don't, like, speak English outside of school.
Yeah. You know, I actually have a story about that, but do you want to say anything before that, you know, about your experience? If you have one?
Well, I was going to say that in Spanish, we have this saying that is speaking other languages in front of other people is disrespectful because they cannot understand you. And sometimes you just don't want them to know something. It's not that you're trying to be disrespectful to them. It's just like, why do they need to know this? Like,
yeah.
Even if it's important or if it's not, I mean, I want some privacy sometimes, you know?
Yeah. I remember this one case I had in high school, right?
Yeah.
Where I was speaking to this teacher. He was also an administrator, I believe. And we both obviously spoke English. And whenever I used to go hang out in his office, we would all obviously mainly speak in English. And it was just me and him, you know? Us, alone. But for some reason, we had the door open because it was too hot that day. So we were just speaking English, and then all of a sudden, other administrators or faculty members came in, and they heard us, and they got annoyed because we were speaking English, and they said, that's disrespectful. You should speak in Spanish because we don't know if you're talking behind our backs. Which we felt a little offended because, first of all, it was just the two of us. There was no need to butt in. It felt kind of bad, like discriminating, you know? Just,
yeah.
It's not their business, you know? Any other stories you guys want to share about that? Anything that you remember or having been?
Not really. I just, like, try to not speak English outside school.
Yeah.
Like, unless I'm in, like, in a private space, just with a friend.
Right. You have more, like, you feel more confident in that area, right? More safer?
I mean, I feel confident speaking English, like, everywhere, but, like, people, like, tend to look like you're weird or, like, you're trying to pretend something.
That's true. Actually, well, I don't know, sometimes that I'm talking to someone in English, or even if it's just a word or a sentence, not even an entire conversation, people just look at you like they have no mercy Honestly, they're just killing you with their eyes. It's like,
The judgment.
yeah, you're like, what are you
Judges in
doing?
Spanish and in Mexican.
Even when
I
you,
know.
when you forget a word, like they start calling you like white chicken.
Ah, I think I heard that one saying before. Yeah.
For those of you who don't know what white chicken means, it means white Mexican or like high class Mexican, and they call you that because they tend to like replace a lot of like Spanish words with the original English word.
Mm.
Yeah, but sometimes it's not necessary. It's just like to show off.
Yeah.
Actually, I do want to talk about something about attacking people who use them. When I first got here, I just spoke English, right? My Spanish was horrible because I was learning from a dinosaur book. But when I got here, I did get bullied because I couldn't speak Spanish. I tried to, but I only spoke English. I got bullied. Honestly, I got jumped. They hit me and everything. It was horrible. But I soon got used to the, language Spanish, the Spanish language, and I would say my Spanish isn't that perfect, but it's better than before. It kind of sucks that people have this, closed mind where they see that they don't like it for some reason. I don't know. About that, have you guys ever been actually threatened with that, with like speaking another language? Have people like personally threatened you guys before?
Not really. It hasn't happened to me.
No?
Not really, not personally, but as someone who worked 3 years for the customer service industry for the States, you do get a lot of offensive comments. Yeah, there were a lot of people that were like, I'm gonna find you and I'm gonna shoot you or whatever. But they cannot do anything because it's over the phone.
Sorry for interrupting, but I think that's accent wise. Like when they notice that it is in your first language,
Yeah.
That's when people like, I don't know if they're too proud about their language and they want to keep it pure, but like,
Yeah.
it has happened to me too. Like since I worked at a call center as well, like if they notice like a little bit of accent, like they know you're not a native, they start to get aggressive.
But it happened to friends of mine that were native too. So it was like just knowing that you are in another place, let's say, it's like, I don't know, they feel threatened, I guess, or they get really defensive sometimes.
Yeah. Since we're talking about this whole shame of speaking a second language, right?
Yeah.
Have you ever had to actually like hide that you speak a different language other than your primary one?
Most of the times I don't tell people that I speak English, other than my family or my friends or co-workers that know that I speak English. I don't go just, living my life in...
Right, people that you only trust, right?
Correct, yeah. And I don't know, I feel kind of shy whenever people ask me like, oh, so you can speak English? And I'm like, I guess a little bit. But I don't really like to tell people, oh yeah, I can speak English, no worries. I don't know. Don't know what that happens.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think like since our first language is like Spanish, well, everybody speaks Spanish in here.
Yeah.
I think it is harder like to say like openly that you speak a second language, like especially English, since like if you tell someone like, oh, I speak English, like they're gonna be like, oh, you're just trying to like flex that you speak a second language, and like they see it as if you're like, I don't know how to describe it, like
sometimes it feels like
you feel superior to everybody else.
Yeah, or like you're kind of rejecting Spanish in a way.
Right. Now, do you think those attitudes make people feel like they make them feel like other people reject it, like reject this language because they'll make it feel like less interested in them?
So a part of Mexican mentality, or mindset is that why do I need to learn another language? Like I'm comfortable here.
Yeah.
Everything is in Spanish. I have a job. I have school, whatever. I have friends. So I don't need it. Like, and I have seen that attitude a lot. Mostly elder people.
Mm-hmm.
Like young generations are getting more interested in learning new languages.
True.
But you can see, or at least here, that is the border, right? But I think maybe in the south of the country, there's more this tendency of like just being lazy to learn another language.
It's true. Like I said, when I got here back in 2012, 2013, right? Obviously I spoke English, and in my classes, when I saw my classmates trying to learn English or whatever, they really didn't want to. They felt that they didn't have the need to it because, like, they didn't speak it too well, and that's what they said, and they didn't really have a use for it, you know?
Yeah.
But now that you mentioned it, it's true. The younger generation is actually wanting to learn more languages, not just English. It's actually a really good thing you mentioned. Not bad.
I've noticed something that happens, like, people try to be, like, too proud of our language and our culture that they see it as, like, degrading to our language, like, to try to speak English before, like, I've heard people say, like, why did you learn English, like, before trying to learn a native language or a native tongue of Mexico? And it's like, why would I if nobody speaks it? Like, it's not gonna help me.
Correct.
It's true. It's very true. I think I had an experience with that actually in one of our Spanish classes.
Really?
With Ophelia. Yes. Where she said, obviously, we have to preserve Spanish, right? Like the actual real Spanish.
Yeah.
Like, for example, automóvil. That's how you actually say it instead of carro, because carro is a mix between that.
Yeah, that's right. It's an adaptation.
Exactly, because of a whole, globalization, I believe it was called.
Yeah, it's a borrowed word.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's a borrowed word from English, car. One thing I do want to know, have you guys ever actually been, like, shamed about speaking a second language by your family or your friends?
Not by my family, but I think, yeah, my friends that are like, oh, te crees mucho porque hablas inglés.
Mm-hmm.
Or something like
Yeah,
that.
or like, oh, you're pretending to be from another country? Or
Yes.
like the classical, oh, you want to show off, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And going back to what Axel said about preserving the language, I disagree with that. In order to preserve a language, not preserve it, but to keep it alive, it has to be evolving constantly.
Yeah.
That's true. That is very true.
Yeah.
In my case, I think I wasn't necessarily shamed, but obviously since I don't not English, my bad, Spanish that often, when I do try to speak it, they do kind of shame me because obviously not pronouncing it right or anything. So I just stopped speaking Spanish and mainly focused on English, which kind of sucks because, well, Spanish is pretty cool, you know?
I think that happens to, like, people that are trying to learn a second language. Like, they get shamed because of their pronunciation, or
Yeah.
they don't know the correct grammar.
Mhm.
And, well, that stops them from, like, being motivated to learn a second language. And they think, oh, I'm not good at it, so I'll stop.
Yeah, actually, I just thought of something. Well, I'm learning a third language. I'm learning Mandarin Chinese, and I have seen the difference in reactions with people. If I tell someone, "Oh yeah, I speak English," they're kind of like, "She's trying to show off" or whatever, right? But if I tell them, "Oh yeah, I can speak a few words of Chinese," they're gonna be like, "Oh, that's amazing! You're so smart! Like, how can you do?" I mean,
I think that comes from, like, since we're neighbors to the U.S.,
yeah,
like, people hating on, well, the U.S. since they're like a first world country, and we're not. I think hate comes from that.
yeah.
Yeah, I think it's similar to other countries too. I think it was, I'm not sure if it was French, that French hate Americans too.
Historically, yes.
Yes. But because of the English, I think it was. I don't know why. They just don't like it, I guess. I don't know if it was the English language or the Americans themselves because of English. Who knows? What was I going to say about being shamed? No, not being shamed anymore, because obviously I was when I got here. Have you guys have any awkward experiences, like talking to someone and they judged you while doing that?
I personally have had experiences like that when like I'm with a friend from Lingua Inglesa on the bus and we're like speaking English and there was a lady like standing up and we were sitting and she was just like staring at us like with a dead stare.
That is creepy.
Oh yeah.
Like she was mad at us speaking English in public.
Okay.
Yeah, it has happened to me too. I was thinking of here in school before we had online classes. Like our major used to speak only English or most English, doing whatever. So it was really common for us to be at the cafeteria, just like ordering something or just sitting at our table, and then just the other majors like judging us, like it's the lingua inglesa students again. Like, oh my god, like oh. They only speak English.
Yeah, I think the only awkward experience I've had was when I went to Plaza del Sol. It was with a friend. We were, we finished work from call center. We just wanted to get some drinks, and we were speaking English, but for some reason we felt these stares. And then I turned around, and obviously they were staring. So I felt a little weirded out. Pretty creeped out, actually. I couldn't enjoy my evening that night. So it was pretty bad. Actually, I wanted to go back to being shamed by family or friends, right? You said something about pronunciation, correct?
Yeah.
Actually, since I was a teacher, I was teaching English, and I've always told this to my students. In reality, I really don't think pronunciation matters that much. As long as you get your message out there, you convey your message and people understand it. That's what matters, Because like we said in the pilot episode, if you haven't heard that, please check it out. Plug in. We have teachers obviously that don't have the best pronunciation, but they give their messages out there, and we understand them, and they're really smart. That's just something I wanted to add.
Oh yeah, if you don't know, like, pronunciation shouldn't be graded to the point where like you have to sound native or with a certain accent. Yeah. As long as people understand what you're saying and they understand the word you're saying and they don't confuse it with a word that sounds similar, that's all you need in order to speak English. Like, I don't think pronunciation is important either.
Yeah, it's not a big factor. How do you guys feel more comfortable, actually? I'd like to know, while speaking in a second language, with a native speaker or a non-native speaker? Which one is more like a comfortable space for you? Native or non-native?
I think, since we're in lingua inglesa, I think speaking to a non-native speaker is like easier. You feel less judged since both of you are going to have mistakes while speaking, maybe while like pronouncing or conjugating verbs or something. They're going to be, I make mistakes too. Like, it's okay, but it has happened to me that I speak to my native cousins and they correct me every time I make a mistake, but I think that's a benefit too. That's how you learn.
True.
Yeah, that's right. I think if we talk to someone who's not native of English or whatever language we are not native of, we kind of may have similar learning experiences, so we can connect to that person. Personally, before, I wasn't very confident of my English, so it was like way better to speak to someone who wasn't a native. But now that I have experience like talking to native people, I think it's all about practicing how you portray yourself when you're speaking. Like, as long as you show confidence and that you truly want to communicate, I think, as you were saying, guys, it's all that matters. You don't have to be like perfect.
Yeah, it's true. In my case, well, I feel comfortable in either situation. Well, if it's English, it's obviously in both native and non-native. However, when I'm speaking Spanish, right, I think I would prefer to speak with a native speaker. Because if I do make mistakes, I would like them to correct me so I can know my errors, right? So I can correct them and better myself. However, in English, it's both sides. Feels comfortable in both sides. With a native speaker, the conversations are more fluent. and you don't have to really stop and explain yourself too much. Native, I have obviously spoken to non-native speakers of English, and it's the same concept. It feels comfortable to me. There's not really a big problem there, to be honest.
I do have a question for you, since you're a native speaker of English and you're surrounded by non-native speakers.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like you speak differently when you're talking to someone who's not a native?
That's a great question, actually. In a different way, I would say a little bit, because there are some words, for example, you guys know what slang is, right?
Yeah.
Everyone has different slang. Obviously, I have slang that I've, gotten over there in the United States since like it was 2012, so they had different slang. But it keeps adapting, like you said, evolving.
Yeah.
You could tell that slang always evolves. It literally always evolves. Now, I wouldn't say I speak like better, obviously, because I could be using simple vocabulary, I don't really like to. I can use a more, interesting vocabulary, but I'd rather just speak in basic vocabulary. I've had other non-native speakers, right?
Yeah.
That actually have better vocabulary and they express themselves in a better way. And that's amazing. I thought that was awesome. So I wouldn't really say I'm really better than that,
Okay. The reason why I'm asking this is because I noticed that I try to adapt my accent according to who I'm speaking to and the vocabulary as well. So, for example, I have Chinese friends because I want to keep on studying, right?
Yeah.
Or my Chinese friends that don't speak Spanish. They only speak English. I notice that when I talk to them, I lower the speed and then I kind of imitate their native accent for some reason, or how they sound when they speak English. But yeah, it's something that I do unconsciously for some reason.
Okay, interesting. How do you guys feel when you hear like other people speak your language, like I guess your primary language? For example, outsiders, like people that are learning Spanish, right? How do you guys feel towards that?
I think that's cool. Like someone's trying to learn your language. For example, I sometimes I'm in class with teacher Frank,
Mm-hmm.
and he sometimes forgets words in English, and he like says it in Spanish, and I think that's really cool. Like even though like he's surrounded by people that speak English, he's not like
limiting himself.
Yeah, it's like not enough for him. Like he also like learned Spanish, so I think that's really cool.
Right. I think it's interesting. So people that are trying to learn a second language, obviously, them learning Spanish, you wouldn't shame them, right? You'd be like, yes, that's great. That's interesting. Keep it up, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Now, what about English? If you're seeing like someone speak English, obviously learning it, how would you treat them? Would you treat them differently than anyone else? Or what would be the situation there? How would you feel?
I think I would just encourage them to keep on learning the language. Just as with Spanish, if it's not their native language, I would just say go for it. Like, it's awesome.
I think something that happens and we don't notice that that often is that when you already know a second language and you see someone else trying to learn a second language, you lose a little bit of empathy since you already know it. You don't remember like the struggles you went through to learn the language.
Oh, true.
So you overestimate like how easy or how hard it is.
Yeah, it's true. I also remember this one saying when I was a teacher. When students were shy and they actually told me that they were nervous because they didn't want to get like bullied or anything like that for speaking English, right? I always told them, don't be ashamed or nervous about speaking a second language because you're making the effort to learn something new, try something out. You're going to create, doorways for yourself, like paths to get a better opportunity. I would say if you don't risk it at all, you won't necessarily win anything. So in reality, I think you're doing something very noble, something awesome, you know? Anything else you guys like to add on this topic of the shame of speaking a second language?
Well, I would say that you will always feel like people are shaming you at the beginning, but as time passes and as you get better and more comfortable and make it like your daily vocabulary, or like if you mix both languages daily, you will be more confident of speaking it in any situation.
Yeah, I agree. I would just say, don't care about what other people say, whether they are telling you, why are you studying another language, or why are you even interested in that one? Well, it's my journey. I want to do it. I'm the one who's getting the knowledge. Just go for it. That people or that person doesn't probably even speak another language. Like probably, I mean, yeah, a lot of them don't even know how to use punctuation in Spanish, which is their native language. So
most of us, when we came to lingua inglesa.
True, don't do that.
Yeah.
Something else I want to talk about is it's cool learning a language. Like, don't let someone like take you out from your journey, because if you learn a new language, like there's a lot of new knowledge that you can learn, since like in our cases a lot of knowledge is in English that's not in Spanish, and vice versa. So
yeah,
I think that the more languages you know, like the more cultures and interesting stuff you can learn.
That's very true. Not only the language, but the culture itself. There's a lot of things you can learn from culture. A lot of knowledge stored in there.
I agree.
So this is it for the first official episode of Literal Podcast, a production of Literal Ink Journal. Please, make sure to check out our journal issues. You can participate by submitting your poems, short stories, essays, drawings, and original photographs. Shout out to Campus Virtual from Watch and teacher Ivan Rodriguez for helping us create this podcast. This has been Literal Podcast. Thanks for listening.